It's hard writing a review for a game that's really, really special because you struggle to convey just how special and how amazing it is. You know, it's this very sensational thing. Every game reviewer who's played something special wants to be like, this is the best game ever. Here's why you should believe me. But man, I gotta say, I really do want to somehow convey that Animal Well, it's one of those special games. One of those once in a blue moon, truly deep down incredible experiences that reminds me all over again why I love video games. I know, it's a bold statement, it's a very sensational way to start, but bear with me. And I will say it's also hard in this case because I don't want to spoil anything. So I'm going to try to avoid basically all specifics, and I'm also only going to be showing gameplay from the very beginning of the game. And if you want to go into the game super duper blind, like I heavily recommend, then just don't even watch this footage, just listen, because even this is going to give you some puzzle solutions for the first part. I really truly do recommend going in as blind as possible. I'm very glad that I watched a couple trailers early on and then I just did not look further. So Animal Well is a Metroidvania, technically, but there is no combat to speak of. There is definitely danger, enemies in a sense, and there are ways to protect yourself against enemies, but you never get, straight up weapons. You never fight. All the items you get are utility items. They help you get around, they help you solve puzzles, and this strikes me as particularly interesting because I like to come up with game ideas myself, and I frequently find myself dwelling on concepts, Metroidvanias in particular, that don't have combat. I just think the idea is really interesting. I want to see it explored in more games. It drastically changes the dynamic of the entire experience and your place in the world. So yeah, the items that you get. This is one reason I'm really glad I didn't watch a lot of pre-release footage, because the items are so delightful. They're usually simple, sometimes so simple. These things are basically toys. And yet there are all these clever ways they work with the environment. There are so many uses for them, and sometimes you will slowly discover these uses the more you play. And the game has no tutorials. Intuitively teaching the player, it's something that everyone loves. It's a mark of good game design. Everyone kind of strives for it when they can. But Animal Well takes it to a level I don't know if I've ever seen. It teaches so much. You learn so many different functions of your items and the environment, and it's all done 100% organically. The game wants you to figure things out yourself, and this leads to these intensely satisfying moments where you've been using an item for hours and suddenly you discover a new use for it. And that's like gaining a new item all over again. It's like getting the item upgraded. And the game gives you these tools and tells you to explore. And this is one of those Metroidvanias that feels very open early on. There are so many different paths to choose from, so many rooms I had to remind myself to come back to later. I do believe that there's more or less a linear order you're going to complete things in, but there's this sense of freedom, this sense of choice that makes it feel like every move I make is my own. And of course, as you gain items, the world just opens up more and more, and it feels like you've just got so many options. It's exhilarating. And it's clear very early on that this is a world worth exploring. There's a sense of magic that sets in right away that makes you just so eager to plunge into unknown territory and find the next cool thing. And I think this comes down to a few things. One, it's the design. This is one of the most cleverly designed games I have ever played, full stop. Oftentimes, a really well-designed game will also be very complex. It'll have a lot of moving parts that work together perfectly. And this game does have a lot of complexities, lots of parts working together, but there's a certain simplicity here that I appreciate on an even deeper level. Being big and complex is great, but I feel like there's something particularly special about doing a lot using a little. And Animal Well deserves to become the textbook example of achieving such an overwhelming amount using simple tools and simple design. Much of the game, again, early game especially, you're navigating and solving these puzzles using super basic tools. Movement, jumping, the process of pressing buttons to open doors, and yet even there, I consistently found myself shaking my head in bewilderment, audibly gasping to myself. It's a degree of cleverness that has honestly floored me. And of course, as you get more items, the cleverness levels skyrocket off the charts. Every tool you've got, every way you can possibly interact with the world is utilized in some way. No idea is left unexplored. I feel like when it comes to Metroidvanias, lots of them nail combat, movement, level design, progression, all that really great stuff. But Metroid itself excels in the puzzle department. Metroid gives you all these little abilities, and instead of just using them for combat or progression, you use them in puzzles to gain items, often utilizing multiple abilities in tandem. Not a lot of other games hit that same level in my eyes. They very rarely pull that off, you know? But Animal Well absolutely does. Its puzzles are as good as puzzles in an actual Metroid game, and even better. And I think it's largely because there's no combat. It's all just you and your items, so it can focus almost entirely on that kind of puzzly, carefully crafted experience. Every room, every chunk of every room is its own little challenge to overcome. Then another reason the world is so particularly fun to explore is that it is dense with secrets. There is so much packed into this map. There are so many different items to get, so many collectibles, so many little secret pockets to find. You have to study the map very carefully because there are always clues, little tells that there's something to find. And following these tells and revealing little chunks you passed by a dozen times because originally you thought they were nothing, it is a constantly rewarding experience. It's like the game has these layers and you just keep digging deeper and deeper. And no spoilers, but I'll just say that the actual map itself is very helpful. And this makes digging for these deeper secrets that much more enjoyable. If you see a little gap in a room and it looks like it might lead somewhere, it probably does. So the game trains you to have a razor sharp eye. Makes you feel like a little detective, you know? Which of course just makes you feel like a genius when you are consistently picking the teeniest of secrets out of this giant space. And the game is full of deeper mysteries. You'll find items or interact with objects and have no idea what they do, and it's only much, much later that you realize what you've been doing. There are all these cryptic mysteries to solve, and I'm not normally patient enough to really immerse myself in these kinds of mysteries. I tend to only struggle so much before I get anxious about how much time I'm wasting, and I just look it up. But wow, Animal Well is a different story. It certainly helps that I had the incredible privilege of playing the game before release. Massive, massive thanks to Bigmode for that, by the way. So there were absolutely no guides to follow online. But like even beyond that, this game and its secrets captivated me, and indeed have still been captivating me like no game I have played maybe since I was a teenager. I honestly don't think that a game has been so much fun to explore. I don't think a game has so genuinely enchanted me with its mysteries that I've wanted to run over it with a fine-toothed comb, wandering each of its rooms countless times in search of mysteries to solve since I was a teenager, with unlimited free time on my hands and only a handful of games to play. Animal Well has kind of reawakened a part of me that's been dormant for years. I can still get sucked into games and just dump countless hours on them, but this desire to dig as deep as possible, it's on another level. This is where I will admit, if there is one reason that someone might fault the game, it's that it's pretty easy to reach these points when you've just kind of run out of places to go. There's obviously something you need to find, but you're really not sure where to find it or what to do. Much of my playtime has been spent just kind of wandering around. And sure, sometimes this does come with a tinge of dismay. Wanting so badly to keep going, but constantly checking nooks and crannies and coming up empty. Or successfully finding secrets, but they're not the secrets you needed. If you're not down to be very patient, or of course look up a guide every once in a while, there is a chance you might find yourself a little frustrated. It's certainly the kind of thing that would normally put me off and essentially force me to look up a guide, and it is something that many people struggle with when it comes to Metroidvanias. which is particularly funny because Dunkey himself, who published the game, calls this a Metroid moment. But there is a lot that helps mitigate the frustration. While you're looking for a way forward, you'll often accidentally stumble across collectibles instead. And there's certainly a small element of disappointment when you see that instead of the progression item you needed, no, it's just another chest with another collectible. But it still feels great because it means that you did indeed successfully notice that there was a secret. And that realization is kind of its own reward. And then this is so much easier to take because the collectibles grant tangible rewards, so you always feel like you're working towards something. Nothing feels worthless. No discovery feels like a waste of time. Then the solutions to the actual big progression-related problems aren't usually too cryptic, as is the case with the kinds of Metroidvania moments Dunkey talks about. There are always visual cues, even if they're very tiny and hard to spot. This means that sometimes it can take a good while to find them, but that just makes it all the more rewarding when you do. Like I said, you feel like a genius. When you finally figure something out, it never makes you roll your eyes and go, how was I supposed to figure that out? No, you just feel incredible. A lesser game couldn't get away with having so much so cleverly hidden from you, because then you would just get frustrated. But the quality and the pitch-perfect design makes me patient. It makes me more willing to comb over the pixels, which means that the payoff is often rapturous. I've been playing with a friend, and you would not believe the elation we feel when we solve one of these little mysteries. When we finally find some little thing that we've been needing for hours and hours, and we can finally go into this room that's been taunting us. It's genuinely thrilling, and that's the kind of experience people talk about having with older games, like the original Metroid, back when there were no internet guides and you just had to take notes and figure it all out yourself. If you let it and you give it your time and patience, Animal Well becomes that kind of experience that has kind of been lost in the modern age of games. Engaging with this world comes with a deep down level of satisfaction that so few games can give. And yet another reason the game is so satisfying to play is the presentation. Let's finally talk about that. Animal Well is a soul-achingly gorgeous game. It utilizes a mix of pixel art with what is probably 3D animation converted to pixels, along with an active lighting system that gives the world this incredible depth. The backgrounds in particular are gorgeous, they're surreal, they're often terrifying. And speaking of terrifying, the game's atmosphere is so thick you could cut it with a knife. It's enchanting and mysterious. It's colorful. You play as this cute little blob guy. But then there are places and sequences that are genuinely scary. The world is populated by animals, and you never know which ones are friendly and which are not friendly. And this play between serenity and terror, it's the kind of tension that I live for in games. And of course, being this beautiful and this creative and interesting, it makes traversing the world a constant delight. It's a world I could spend any amount of time in, even if I'm feeling lost and kind of sad that it's been a while since I've found anything. Ultimately, I am still enjoying myself. I'm still just so happy to be playing the game. And I know that that dopamine hit when I do find something will be more than enough reward. Even after combing through the game for hours and hours, I still haven't found everything. I've beaten the game in the traditional sense, but there are still big chunks of the map I haven't uncovered. Even as I record this, I am burning to get back to it, and my friend is in the other room hunting for little spots on the map that could potentially lead somewhere. I'm not kidding. And I'm becoming progressively more certain that some of these mysteries we will not solve. I think people are gonna have to band together on the internet to figure some of this stuff out, because there are all these little clues everywhere that really look like something, but we just don't know what they mean yet. It's phenomenal, and I cannot wait to see how deep this well goes. Before we wrap this up, we might as well talk about potential flaws. There really aren't many flaws that I can perceive, at least. Like I said, you might get stuck. Probably a lot if you're going for 100% completion without using a guide. I can also imagine that the game might be difficult to play for those who are vision impaired. The game thrives on its ability to hide teeny tiny little secrets just out of sight, which might be a problem for some people. There are also times when it's a little hard to see what are background elements and what are not. The visuals can sometimes kind of blend together. Then the only other real problem I've got with it is that it's a little bit annoying to cycle between items, and this only gets worse the more items you get. I'd love a wheel or hotkeys or something to make it quicker to grab exactly what I need. But that's basically it. Otherwise, the game is simply wonderful in every way, and it goes without saying that this is an even greater feat when you consider that it was created almost entirely by one single guy, which is baffling. Once more, I will say that it's hard to convey how deeply in love with Animal Well I have fallen, and what it means to me now. I've never made a game, but I would love to someday, and I spend a lot of time coming up with concepts and doing preliminary design. And if I could ever make a game like Animal Well, even if it was the only game I ever made, I would feel like I had created a piece of art that was everything as good as I could ever want it to be. It ticks so many of my own personal boxes that it feels like it was made just for me, or by me in an alternate universe where I learned how to code and was a lot smarter. It's just about everything I could want in a game like this. It's equal parts serene and beautiful and eerie and terrifying. It's filled with secrets and mysteries and surprising moments. It's been designed with such care and skill that the word clever that I've been using, it hardly does it justice. It's an experience that feels rich and epic and grand and deeply satisfying, yet it's built upon a foundation of elegant simplicity. It's always good to give these things some time before shuffling any top 10 lists around, but at this moment, Animal Well feels like one of the best games I've ever played. Or at least it's certainly one of my new favorites. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks again to Bigmode for providing me with a copy of the game. Congrats to Dunkey on publishing your first game. You really showed you know how to pick 'em, man. And Billy Basso, all I can say is, you done good. Genuinely, thank you for this. See y'all later.